I am so excited to have everyone on today's virtual training, Leveraging Partnerships to Fundraise for VITA Programs. I'm Jenny Huang, the Outreach Associate for the Get It Back campaign. So the Get It Back campaign is a national effort at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities to promote the EITC and the CTC. We work with many community organizations and advocacy groups to connect workers with tax credits and free tax filing. We provide outreach tools, trainings, and resources to help you in your work. You can visit our website, eitcoutreach.org, for more information and resources. So today's training is a part of our virtual training series that features the expertise of campaign partners in the field. You can find past trainings on our website and on our YouTube page. So back in August, we hosted a couple trainings on Taxathons, tax filing events that can help you promote your tax site. Taxathons can generate media attention, attract new clients, increase numbers, and incorporate fun into tax filing. You may already be throwing Super Saturday events, which serve the same function. If you aren't familiar with Taxathons yet, we have many resources on our website that we'll be sending links to after this webinar is over. So today, our presenters will share how you can leverage Taxathons and other filing events to raise funds. They'll also focus on approaching banks and using these events as perks for sponsoring your VITA site. So today, we are extremely lucky to have two wonderful VITA partners with us, Kathy Matthews and Kate Herman Stone. Kathy Matthews, a Senior Program Director with Community Enterprise Partners, has led the Cuyahoga EITC Coalition for the last 12 years. Ms. Matthews is well-versed in the administration and operation of volunteer income tax assistance sites and provides oversight for over 400 IRS-certified volunteers and 25 VITA locations. Since its inception in 2005, the Coalition has prepared over 107,000 income tax returns, resulting in 144 million refunds for low and moderate income families in Cuyahoga County. Prior to joining Enterprise, Ms. Matthews has over 18 years of corporate work experience in the financial industry in both Cleveland and Chicago. During her corporate tenure, she held various leadership positions within the retail, commercial, and client services business units. Her experiences include several management positions, along with time spent leading corporate-wide, diverse, revenue-generating, and expense reduction initiatives. Ms. Matthews has a bachelor's degree in English and Psychology from John Carroll University. She's a founding member of Outrun Ovarian Cancer, a volunteer-driven nonprofit organization dedicated to raising ovarian cancer awareness and money for research and education. She also dedicates her volunteer time in support of several schools located throughout the Cleveland area, and most recently served as a volunteer for Catholic Charities Migration and Refugee Services. Kate is the development manager at Ladder Up. In this role, she executes all of the organization's fundraising efforts, including events, outreach to individuals, grants management, and whatever else comes her way. She also serves as a volunteer for the organization's tax assistance program. Prior to joining Ladder Up, Kate cut her teeth in the world of fundraising by working to raise money for candidates for public office, and gained additional fundraising and event planning experience at the Illinois Campaign for Political Reform, the Latin School of Chicago. Kate has a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Public Policy from DePaul University. Originally from the St. Louis area, Kate has made her home in the north side of Chicago, but she does remain a die-hard Cardinals fan. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Kate, who will start us off today.
Thank you, Jenny. I'd like to start the presentation by thanking everyone for having me today and saying I don't want to fight with anybody about baseball. So, you can email me offline if you've got comments about the Cardinals record for the year. I know it's bad. I wanted to give some insight into some of our efforts to raise money through a taxathon. We initially heard about the idea of a taxathon through the great folks at Prepare and Prosper in Minnesota. And last year we made some efforts to have one. So we had sort of three goals going into it. We wanted to build excitement around the tax season, raise some money, and really participation in February. As I'm sure many of you know, that's the busiest time of the tax season, or at least it is for us. So we did three main things. We did something that I call unit-based peer-to-peer fundraising. I think it's kind of a term that I made up. We sought out some higher dollar donor pledges, and we also offered prizes for our volunteers throughout the month of February. So to explain what I call unit-based peer-to-peer fundraisers, we had volunteers create pages on anython.com. It's a great website that gives people the opportunity to raise money sort of based on a unit. So it's like, I'm going to take X number of steps or run X number of miles or bake X number of cookies. So our unit was tax sessions. Just to give a little bit of background about our pool of fundraisers or volunteers from which we recruited fundraisers. A lot of our volunteers are just one-off. They come out once or twice during the year. But we do have about 1,000 people who actively volunteer with us each year. And many of them return year to year and come out multiple times. In 2017, the average volunteer completed 3.7 sessions over the course of the season. So we really were looking for those people who had high session counts and had been around for a long time and hoping that they would set up pages. We also asked members of our associates board and our advisory boards to do anython pages, and a few members of our staff did as well. Just as some insight into how we determined our units that we chose to do sessions, there was some discussion of asking for a pledge per session or per return, but since each return needs to be checked by 2 people, and because we have volunteers who are in non-tax role, like site leaders or people who do intake or translators, we decided to just do sessions because we thought it would open it up to more people. I should circle back to mention that Anython also provides social sharing tools and email templates that we think a few people did use for outreach for their pages. To give a little sense of our results, we had about 10 people set up pages with 90 total donors and just over $4,000 in donations. With Anython, you can make a one-time pledge or a per unit pledge, and we had a mix of both. The average total gift came out pretty close. The upside to the per session pledges, I think, is that it might drive a volunteer to go out that one extra time, because it might get them that extra $5 or $10 from the people who pledged to support them. And just to give you a little bit of insight about our participants, you can see that the amounts raised really ran the gamut. We had a couple people bring in $4, and I'll tell you that was me. I pledged $2 to anybody on the board or anybody on the staff who volunteered, and each of those people did 2 sessions. And then we had other people who raised up and over $1,000. Our top fundraiser is somebody who is on our associates board and is also a longtime volunteer. And then just to give you a little bit of insight, our second best fundraiser was our tax program manager, a member of our staff. And not to brag, but the third one was me. And then the other people who did pretty well were other longtime volunteers. I reached out to our top fundraiser for some insights into what she did, and I didn't get, she wasn't able to put some notes together for me in time, but I can share a little bit about what my outreach looked like in terms of good practices, or hopefully good practices. I just sent out an email to members of my friends and family, making sure to loop in people who had hit me up for donations in the last couple of years. And then I also put up a post on Facebook. Each time somebody made a pledge, I acknowledged them in the comments. And I also wrote handwritten notes to people who made donations to my efforts. I think that those, people should mostly just know their crowds, but it can just be as simple as sending one email or putting up one social media post and maybe resharing it once or twice. But at least for the people who did outreach in our circle, it didn't take too much follow-up. It's also really great to see how people sort of come out of the woodwork. The next thing we did was high dollar donor pledges. When you see the summary, I just want to say that this is high dollar for us. We're not talking $20,000, $30,000, but we were really glad to have these pledges included. So we asked some some donors to make a pledge to donate a certain amount of money per tax return completed on a Saturday. Just as a note, this was way too complicated, and next year, this coming year, we're just going to make this a pledge per session so that the units match up with what other fundraising we're doing. But we made estimates on kind of what a person would end up committing based on previous year results, which we're also able to do with sessions. And we looked at donors like current and former board members, other people who were existing, donors of larger amounts, and people who had given to a campaign that we did a couple of years ago, but that we hadn't seen or heard very much from since. So we hit those people up again. Just a quick summary of sort of how it came out. I apologize, this is a little bit small and maybe kind of hard to read, but yes, you can see many of our donors only pledged portions of $1, which was why it was great to say that we had a group of donors who were making a pledge per return at this point. And none of these people were particularly worried about getting any recognition for it, so we were just able to say group of donors. And by the end of the month, it came out to $4 per return. You'll notice that in the last 2 weeks of the month, we had a couple of donors added. One was because she just didn't get back to us in time, but we're very grateful for her support. And the other one was, I think, somebody who their preference was to sort of strategically ramp up the amount that they were giving to build some excitement around it, which really worked out. It gave us another reason to be reaching out to people, and it gave us something new to say as we were doing our communications, which I'll get into shortly. The third component of what we did was to offer prizes to our volunteers. We did a weekly drawing of 3 names. The drawing was of anyone who had attended a session during that week. So the prize was like a nice bag of coffee for those people who are from this area. It was Intelligentsia coffee. It's very delicious. A ladder up hat, which is a prized possession for anyone who should come across it, and a travel mug. By way of background, we have a board member at the coffee company. The hats were left over from an event we did a couple of years ago, and we just bought the travel mugs. Since it's 4 weeks, and we did 3 names a week, we just needed 12 of each, which wasn't too hard to come by. At the end of the month, we also drew 3 names from a list of people who had completed 2 or more sessions, and we gave them gift cards to Amazon and Target, and also one prize winner got admission to our annual casino night and silent auction fundraiser. So that lucky person, got free admission to an event that didn't really cost us anything to let them into. But they were happy to attend. He was really glad. In terms of how we sort of publicized our efforts, we sent a series of volunteer postcards encouraging volunteers to sign up for sessions, sign up for training, and in this case, we did one around Taxathons. We also do a weekly volunteer email newsletter during our tax season, so the promotions around that were pretty heavily focused on Taxathon, and we did some social media posts. I apologize, this slide's a little bit hard to see, but this was the postcard that we mailed. The larger image that says Taxathon was the front, and the rest is on the back. We just tried to outline what it was and what we were doing. You'll also note on this slide that it says we mailed it the first week of February, which was way too late. Our volunteer newsletter is also a good tool. We use Constant Contact, so the cost is relatively low to reach a lot of our volunteers. We made sure to use it to thank people who had been coming out and to also highlight the extra impact that these fundraising efforts were having for our organization. So one example that I've put on this slide is to say that we had the number of returns we had completed helped us secure these refunds for our clients, and that also we were going to get an extra $800, $825 because of the donors who were making a pledge per return. In the email newsletter, we also encourage people to sign up for tax sessions, highlighting that they'd win prizes, and we gave some shout outs to our volunteers who were doing fundraising around Taxathon. There's a picture of our best fundraiser right on there. We also did posts on social media to coincide. We share our newsletter on our Facebook page every time it goes out, but we also did some individual posts. So those basically did the same thing. They encouraged people to sign up to make a page on Anython. They publicized the match, and they highlighted participants who were doing really well, particularly just that one, because we didn't really want to highlight members of our staff. So we had a few challenges. This was our first year doing it. I'll also add that contributing to this is that we had a staff change in our office for 2 members of our tax assistance program. So we were playing catch up a little bit there, but they still managed to help us pull this off, which was great. Since we didn't start until January or February, or sorry, it was December or January proceeding, and we kind of got started slowly. We didn't have a lot of time to ask donors to make pledges. We didn't have a lot of time to recruit participants, and we didn't do a kickoff event. As I mentioned before, our donation structure was also kind of odd and mismatched. And I would add that while Anython is a great website, their processing fees are really high. It's like 8% of your revenues. And then getting the prizes to winners was really difficult. If you have something like a coupon or a gift card that you can just stick in the mail, that's a lot easier. One other thing that I had mentioned to someone else who was talking to about this is that we were giving prizes to people who may have only been coming out once. And we think a lot of people didn't realize they would get a prize or be entered into a drawing. So that's something that we're looking to change for next year. So speaking of changes for next year, we have already started. We started reaching out to higher dollar donors in October, and setting up the peer-to-peer fundraising aspect will be promoted with our training. The postcard will also go out earlier. We're also going to do a kickoff event, a Super Saturday, like Jenny mentioned, where we'll have a longer tax session the first weekend in February, and we'll be inviting local media to have extra treats and prizes for clients and some perks for volunteers, like sandwiches. We're going to get some sandwiches. So that's pretty much what we have done. I have it open for questions, but I know Jenny might want to wait until later. So Jenny, I'll hand it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kate. I have the same bottle that you gave out for your prizes, and I think it's a fantastic prize. So
we did a lot of research on that. So it was a carefully chosen prize.
That's awesome. Hydro Flask. It's a great brand. Anyway, we didn't have any questions come in right now. So if anyone has any questions for either Kate or Kathy in her slides later, please just shoot them over on the control panel to your right, and we'll answer them at the end. So awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. Kathy, let's turn it over to you.
Terrific. Thank you very much. So I'm delighted, but very humbly happy to share with you some of our experiences here with the Cuyahoga EITC Coalition in Cleveland, Ohio. Share some of our experiences and our lessons learned. As you can imagine, some of them have been easy or easier than others, and some have certainly been learned the hard way. I also like to describe our relationship with banks here in the Cleveland market as work in progress. So, while this is what we're doing, we continue to look at what we do, how we can do it better, correct some of the mistakes that we make, and work to strengthen our relationship with our funders all the time, especially our bank partners, because there's a lot to be gained by both parties, as I'll describe throughout the presentation. So what are the benefits of a partnership with financial institutions for the coalition? So what's in it for us? And there's 2 things that I would describe here, is that we get funding, first and foremost, and we also get corporate involvement, which can lead to other resources. So for us, when we get funding from banks, it helps round out our funding sources and helps, what we like to say, diversify our revenue streams. And so when we look at our funding, we have 66% of our funding comes from government, 17% from United Way, and then another 17% from banks. So it's pretty significant in terms of our overall budget that we maintain our funding stream with our bank partners. And then as far as corporate involvement, we get volunteers. Clearly, volunteers are very important. We get tax preparers and greeters. And in some cases, it's even led to other resources, such as they help support our marketing efforts. They'll do the actual production and printing for us, along with some distribution. They help us with their marketing personnel, put together press releases. So there are a lot of other things, depending on who your contact is within the financial institution, to leverage other resources. We then get, as I said, the funding is important. But we get funding for special events. So we talk a lot about Super Saturday events, which are, as you all, I'm sure know, is, just a Saturday event that's well coordinated with the bank, their volunteers in the community, and usually a host site. And then, as just described, Taxathons. We also get funding or have asked for funding. And again, this is the nuance of relationship building. We'll ask for funding or talk about funding for specific needs, such as niche marketing. So we were able to get one financial institution to help fund our marketing efforts, specifically with the Spanish-speaking population here in Cleveland. They were very interested in doing that, so they earmarked, $3,000 to help us do that, which was, really helpful to us, because it was new money and it was a new effort that we could do to better support our outreach to Spanish-speaking taxpayers. They've been instrumental in helping us sometimes start up new tax sites where we feel we've been underserved or where we have inadequate coverage, specifically in some of the inner ring suburbs here in the Cleveland market. And then it's been used, we can use the funds for operating a specific site based on a mutually beneficial neighborhood for both the bank and where we have a need. Again, we've talked about they're a great source for potential volunteers, and some banks are better than others. Smaller banks are going to be more reserved in how many times they're asking their bank employees to get involved in community activities, and some are really good at it. And again, it'll vary based on the bank, the size, and their position within the market. And some years are better than others, quite frankly. It always helps to have a champion within the organization that's helping recruit the volunteers. And the more senior that person, the better. What's nice about the funding we get from the banks is that most often, while they may earmark it for certain things based on the relationship and the conversations that we have in anticipation of the ask, is that more often than not, they're unrestricted. So it allows us to be flexible in our use of funds. And it also is great because it allows us for some of our funding requirements to be able to use those dollars as matched dollars. So again, a lot of flexibility that comes with money that comes from the financial institutions. The other opportunity for us is that we have numerous potential partnerships within the community. So in Cleveland, we right now have a relationship with almost 11 banks, and we're reaching out to all of them every year. And I would encourage all of you to reach out. You just never know what year or what need they might have, that your program provides a great opportunity for them to get involved. And their investment, honestly, will vary by, as I said, by size of the bank and their position within the market, how many branches they have here, whether their headquarters are here. Again, it's a very tailored and a very relationship managed process that we go through with each of the financial institutions here in the Cleveland market. And then I think the other advantage for the coalition is that we're able to bring bank products and services to our underbanked. Most of our clients are banked, but we find that a lot of them, if not most of them, are underbanked. And so it provides us a great opportunity to connect our clients with the financial institutions or with financial banks and services, or with financial products and services, in a way in which hopefully clients or the taxpayers are more comfortable hearing or learning about what banks can offer. They have, as you all well know, there's often a trust issue with the financial institutions, and through our program and through our relationship with the bank, we know we're connecting them with the right resources within the bank that have a shared commitment to make sure we're giving them the right products and services based on their needs. And and then success breeds success. You get one of these financial institutions who's a champion for you and advocate throughout the community. Others want to follow, and we've found that to be more often the case. Is that the more banks we have, the more others want to make sure they're at the table with us. What are the benefits of the partnership with the coalition for the financial institutions? First of all, it's a meaningful, we are able to provide a meaningful volunteer experience for the bank employees who have an opportunity to participate in a really satisfying community-based activity. So what I like to say here is that for the volunteers who work with us, that 1 hour of their time can mean as much as $6,300 to a family, and and we help them avoid fees. So there's it's such a meaningful experience for both the volunteer as well as then the person receiving the service. Our program aligns very well and very strongly with most financial institutions' corporate responsibility goals. So their goals are, tied and match well with what the coalition's goals are. So it makes it a really good fit for them, and we're not having to convince them. It's very easily understood and explained. The work that we do provides great benefit for the families as well as the local economy in the neighborhoods in which they want to serve. So we like to say is that by investing in the coalition, that we are able to support a program that provides not only a benefit to the low and moderate income families that we serve, but it also provides a value to the economy, and that we know most of the refunds that the clients that we're serving are used and spent locally. We also are able to talk about the fact that for every $1 they invest in our program, we're able to return $30 to the local economy or to the local community. And so again, the ROI on this is very attractive to them. It also gives them great visibility and recognition throughout the community, and it gives them a way to enhance their credibility and build trust. We do all kinds of marketing and outreach, and include, for those who contribute at certain levels, their logos on all of our posters and our radio advertising, other things that we do that makes our program very visible and far-reaching within the low-income communities. Just allows them to get their brand and their logo more visible throughout the community as a result of partnering with us. It is an opportunity for them to discuss banking products and services at events. They are allowed to set up tables, and to the extent that they can open accounts or talk about their products and services, host, little seminars during our events. We provide them a great vehicle to be able to do that. And it's an opportunity for them to be able to clearly demonstrate their investment in low and moderate income neighborhoods. In other words, it allows them to satisfy some of their CRA requirements. And for those who are not familiar with the CRA, I'm not going to go into this in much detail, but it's an important aspect of what we do. Is that it was an act that became effective in 1977. And it was a result of community groups organizing to help eliminate some of the housing and banking discriminations that were happening in some of our low-income neighborhoods over the course of time. And it addressed what were very discriminatory lending practices, resulting in redlining, that was used to deny or raise the cost of loans and credit products to low-income and minority borrowers. And so it was intended then to encourage financial institutions, when enacted, to meet the credit needs of not only the communities in which they operate, but also to make sure that low and moderate income families were able to access bank products and in a way that was affordable. And so by investing in our program, they are able to take credit then and use that investment towards their CRA requirement. And so why do you care about the CRA? Is that the banks, if you don't have a relationship with them and you're trying to pitch to them about why they should consider investing in your program, is they have, because of the CRA, not only is it a mutually beneficial situation, but banks have a strong incentive to invest in the communities that most VITA programs intend to serve. Our programs provide an ideal opportunity for banks to facilitate the education and provide other financial related services to low-income families and individuals in low-income neighborhoods. And so again, a very, very direct benefit that they're able to then both, and we can help them do this both quantitatively and qualitatively, describe the work that resulted from the investment they made in our program. We are also able to help based on where their needs might be as it relates to CRA, looking at the various zip codes. I'm sure all of you have access to, really rich data that again, we can easily, or what we've been able to do is easily provide them, is to take a look at what zip codes do they need to be involved in, or are they interested in being involved in, and then how do we match that need with where we're located, and or as I described earlier, the potential to perhaps open a new site because we recognize that there's an area that might be underserved and needs a greater investment. And then we also I think when you talk to banks, that you want to be able to talk about, where your tax sites are located and having a conversation around, what your experience has been, have it readily available around the statistics that are associated with those sites or those areas, such as the number of EITC eligible. The Brookings Institute has a lot of this data. What are the number or percent of EITC eligible by zip code, and the percent of families that are living in poverty. That again helps them be able to visualize the impact that investment can have in very specific neighborhoods. Before you make the ask, a couple of things we would suggest, and again, this gets back to my humbly telling you lessons learned and our experiences, both good and not so good, as you will have it. But before you make the ask, you want to talk to some of your neighboring VITA groups, whether it's outside your region or within your state, or other organizations across the country, for banks that have either national presences or regional banks, and see what the potential bank partners are doing elsewhere. And you can use that as a starting point. You want to also take a look at and be thoughtful and consider what has worked well with your existing bank relationships or other important relationships. And so use those as a foundation upon which to build, how you can move forward in making a proposal or an ask from a financial institution. And I would suggest also that you want to do your research. Be aware of what's going on in your market. Take a look at what new financial institutions are trying to make a presence in your market. We've had a couple here in Cleveland recently, not very big ones, but we're in active conversations with two smaller organizations who are looking to provide us between $5,000 and $7,500, which for us is really really good money. That as a result of them trying to get into the market and having an impact. Look at where branches are opening and closing. That's always a good sign where banks are going to be looking at making sure that they are investing and showing their commitment to the neighborhoods. Mergers and acquisitions always provide great opportunity, along with banks who might be involved in and or executing community benefit agreements. Putting all that together then to create a strong proposal or to begin a conversation with a bank allows you to start from, I think, a position of strength. When you're going in, you know your market, you know what their needs are, and you're being able to very clearly align what their needs are. So you're basically helping them help you, but talking about it in ways in which you can help them, which, like I said, in turn, very much helps us. And being very equal at the table, despite the fact that you're asking for something, but you're also very much, and don't ever underestimate that, you're also giving them quite a bit as a result of the opportunity to partner with you. So as you're making the ask, what we've, again, lessons learned is don't overlook any costs as you consider what to include in your ask. So don't sell yourself short. Make sure you're taking a look at, and don't be sheepish about asking for fixed costs such as your time. It's valuable, it's quantifiable, and don't hesitate to include it. All they can do is say no. All you can do is ask, and all they can do is say no. You want to make sure you're including, if you have any new costs, you want to make sure you're covering. Again, you never know what might be the sweet spot for the financial institutions. And when you can lay it all out in a way in which they understand, they know personnel costs, they know, what equipment and supplies mean to their business. The same applies to our programs, is make sure you're looking at what new costs you could include, such as computers or some supplies. Include any event advertising. It's not cheap to create, print, and distribute materials. So make sure you're thinking about how you can include some of those costs, and or what they could perhaps even do in kind, which is certainly something we've been the recipient of. And then be consistent with what I would suggest you be consistent with what the neighboring VITA tech site is asking for. You're not competing for funds, but it's nice to be able to know what's reasonable and be knowledgeable about what is happening in maybe the surrounding areas. So you don't want to ask for too much or too little. You want to make sure you're in the sweet spot. Don't ever sell yourself too short, but you don't want to be asking for $50,000 when in the surrounding area, all they've been donating is $5,000. You want to make sure you're in the ballpark. So basically what I'm saying there is do your homework. My other suggestion is don't give anything away. I found that we were paying for, during our Super Saturday events, for example, we were paying for lunches for all our volunteers. Well, it turns out those lunches we're feeding the bank employees during our Super Saturday events. So we corrected our, our proposal to make sure we were including things like volunteer lunches, waters, things that, again, while maybe not necessarily that expensive, but it adds up, especially if you're doing multiple events. And then, as I said, just be consistent with your ask amongst bank partners in your region. It's a small world, and I've found that people people in the community development teams within financial institutions tend to move from bank to bank, and so you just want to be consistent. You don't want, to be giving one financial institution the value of something that's, $5,000 for one bank, but $20,000 for another. So just be consistent in how you're communicating and talking about the benefits that are associated with the various amounts that you're asking for. Depending on the size of the bank and the geographic service area that they cover, banks, like what I have found is that banks, it's beneficial and helpful to give them multiple funding levels to consider. Again, always aim high, but give them different ways in which they can view what the different dollar amounts that you're proposing in terms of sponsorship levels will provide them. And then I always create the catch-all. You name the amount, and we'll talk about what that provides you. And again, most of our sponsorships range in the 45 to 40. There's one as much as 50,000, which we get 45. We ask for 50, we get 45, and as small as 5,000, which means we've gotten 2,500. And so I don't ever want to say no to the 2,500. It very much helps pay the bills and cover costs, but I also don't want to be giving the 2,500 person or the $2,500 financial institution the same benefits as the 50,000 or the 45,000. You don't want to dilute that. So just be mindful of how you manage that process. And then the way we've done it is we start the tax season, and I just finished sending them all out. I was a little late this year, but in the September, October timeframe, you want to send a cover letter that describes your organizations in a really strong and compelling way, and then include the sponsorship levels that you're proposing for associated with either Super Saturday events and or sponsoring a site or a taxathon. Hopefully you have a relationship with those banks, so you have a sense maybe of what they might be interested in. Some of it's guessing, some of it's just asking the question, and then some of it might be just a cold call and just create a template. I think, Kate, you were going to send a copy of what we've used as a guide for you to consider. It's something we've used that's worked for us. It's something, again, we continue to work on. It's by no means an end product, but happy to share that with you at the end of this call. And what to do then when hopefully the banks do commit to the funding. We can never say thank you enough, and we find that a lot of our partners really appreciate the personalized thank you note, and especially the person who advocated. Most people that you're going to deal with are not the end all be all decision, and they need to advocate for you behind the scenes to make sure that your proposal or your funding request gets shimmied to the top. And so a personalized thank you note goes a long way. And then send a thank you note to the head of the bank, foundation, or the head of the department that authorized the grant or the sponsorship. And it'll come in different ways. Sometimes it's a sponsorship for an event. Sometimes it's a grant. It just kind of depends on the financial institution. And sometimes they have more flexibility for certain amounts that are below a threshold, a dollar amount threshold that makes it a sponsorship versus then the more formal that goes through a grant. So again, some of that is just finding the right person within the financial institution that can help you navigate that, and or just do your homework on their community or corporate responsibility community involvement page to see what that process looks like. I'm always available and willing to at least share with you our experiences with the various financial institutions that serve the Cleveland market. Most of them are regional, or if not, they're mostly are regional, a couple national, and I can certainly share with you our experiences if you're interested in a one-on-one conversation. We then make sure we recognize the banks in our press releases, on our social media. We include, as I described earlier, making sure that their logo or they're represented on our marketing materials website, and then signage at the event, which is all kind of just standard marketing protocols and sponsorship recognition for the various levels of financial commitment they give to the event. And then as soon as possible after the event, we send, if the event's Saturday, by Monday, that they sponsored an event, by Monday or Tuesday, we're trying to summarize what the event results were in terms of number of people served, the dollar amount of the refunds, whatever other data that's available quickly that we can share with them to kind of just seal the deal in terms of, and there you go, that investment was really worth your time, along with the volunteers. Your impact was pretty significant, because again, the numbers always tend to tell a great story and are very strong. And then at the end of the tax season, we send a year-end thank you letter that summarizes or restates not only what the results were of the event or the site that they sponsored, but we talk about our overall results from the tax season, which tends to be, fairly strong. In our coalition, we're doing about 15,000 tax returns a year, which is $20 million in refunds, give or take. And it's just really nice to be able to show them the context of, the impact that we're able to make, not only with their investment, but the overall investment that we receive from the community at large into benefiting the community. What to do when banks don't commit, which I certainly have had some experiences in that, and that is keep in touch and keep trying. Never say no. Most of the time, it's not because of what you're proposing; it's just timing. And there are other competing priorities at that moment. And 1 year you're in, and 1 year you're out. And the other advice I would say is never take it for granted, because 1 year you're in, next year you might be out. So keeping in touch is really, really important, so that you're, continue to be top of mind, or at least, they're hearing from you more than once a year, so that when their budget process begins, they're keeping you in mind, if not this year, perhaps next year. We always invite, whether they contribute or not, to our celebration events. We have a kickoff event at the beginning. We have a volunteer and wrap-up event at the end of the year, and we always invite all of our bank partners to celebrate with us. And then again, another way to recognize those who did invest. And then what I like to do is keep bank representatives that and again, this is all relationship management in nature, is making sure that we're keeping them current with the significant accomplishments or milestones achieved by the coalition. Then we have a one-pager that we send out annually. Sometimes I do it via email, and sometimes I do it with a personal note. It just kind of depends on the person that I'm trying to reach. And then we send periodically throughout the year, I send emails with relevant information about trends or insights around the EITC and the benefits of VITA, especially in this day and age of tax reform and the VITA funding and all that. I just like them to make sure they know we're on top of it. In almost all instances, this is a program that banks care deeply about. And so keep helping them be knowledgeable and up to speed on what is happening in this area of work. I think is, again, this gets back to the give and the get that you have through your relationships. And this is where we can give easily, because again, they may not in their day-to-day work, are certainly not going to keep tabs on it, where we were able to give to them so that they can stay knowledgeable on programs and areas of mutual interest. So again, continuing that thought a little bit, but so ongoing relationship with our bank partners is, we invite them to participate in our pre-planning and post-event review meetings for those who like to. Some come, some don't, but we always give them I let that be their decision, not ours, in terms of they're invited to everything that they want to be involved in. We also invite bank representatives to join our advisory group or our steering committee. As I mentioned earlier, we try to keep them up to date on our milestones and accomplishments with a one-page overview, sending emails, inviting them to our events, and then set up. What we've done is we even set up some regularly scheduled meetings to share progress and insights on how our group is, striving to improve, and what we're doing around, improving our services and our outreach to low and moderate income families. And I found that they really appreciate and enjoy those conversations. It helps them. Most of them are clearly in community development or in the corporate responsibility area, and knowing what we're doing in low income neighborhoods, not only with our work, but whatever other work our partners might be doing to help keep them informed and share information is really has been advantageous. And then last but not least, I humbly share with you my, lessons learned, and that is you can never say thank you enough. I think personalizing relationships to the greatest extent possible is really, really important as we look at bank funding, because again, we're competing with a lot of really great programs, and we want to make sure that we're getting the maximum ask from our bank partners, and having a strong relationship certainly helps play into that. Showing our value, again, by sharing information and making sure they know and understand deeply the strength of your program is really important. So, and then knowing how they want to be communicated with. Some like to meet in person, they like coffee, they like lunches, they like breakfast, they like in-person discussions at a site or at your office or at their office. Some prefer email communication, just being sensitive. Some are data wonks, and I'll send, good information or good research, that I come across and share with them, that kind of stuff. And so it's just really understanding what their preferences are and being good stewards of that relationship to make sure they understand your program and you're putting it forward in the best light possible. I think the other thing they really appreciate from us, sometimes nonprofits or organizations like ours are, we're overworked and never have enough time in the day. But I think they really appreciate when we deliver on doing what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. So delivering on a timely basis is really appreciated. So they're not hunting you down for information, but that you're on top of it and providing that information to them. And then making sure that for the events that you plan in partnership with the financial institution is making sure you're drawing on all the resources that you can to make sure that the event runs smoothly, and that you can never plan enough when you've got a bank partner, because again, they're very sensitive to their brand and their reputation within the community. The last thing they want is a bad experience associated with their brand that, they're going to think twice when you come knocking again. So making sure that your events or whatever activities you have that got their name associated with it are well run, and that you've engaged them as much as they're willing to engage in helping make that event successful. It's mutually clearly beneficial. And then take time to celebrate. Everyone likes to be a part of a winning team, and making sure you find ways to celebrate and to, again, go back to thanking them for their investment in our work together. And then pay attention. People move from bank to bank rapidly and overnight. And so one person that used to be, here today is there tomorrow. And so just making sure you're keeping tabs on who your primary contacts, where they might be and where they land. And that goes back to something I said earlier too, is just making sure you've got consistency. Because again, in terms of what you're giving to different financial institutions, is that one day when they're somewhere, they may be somewhere else tomorrow, and you just don't want to get caught in a situation where you have to start explaining things, or you've got disparity in what you do for one institution versus another. Again, I don't know about all the markets that are represented on the call today, but Cleveland is a very small world, and would just like to not have to move backwards in terms of a relationship because of something I can control. So again, just making sure you're keeping track of who's where, and that and then when it comes time for the ask, that you're current on where that person is, and just being in the know of who you should be asking what from. So that's it. Any questions for me? I'm happy to answer any. And if not during the call, I'm very accessible outside of a call like this if you have questions or want to talk about anything specific.
Awesome. Thank you for all that great information. We do have a few questions, and if you have any more questions, please just shoot them over and I'll have Kathy and Kate answer them. So Kathy, for you, have you experienced any differences in approaching banks versus credit unions?
We have not.
Okay. Cool.
There's only been one credit union we've worked with in Cleveland, but my experience with them was fairly similar.
Okay. And can you expand a little bit, in addition to community development staff, are there any other good places to start when you're reaching out to banks?
Your local branch, the branch that's in the neighborhood closest to either your location and or a hub around several of your sites. The branch manager there might be a really great place. Again, finding a champion within your financial institution is really important. And so sometimes your branch manager might be maybe that right person, or can certainly open the door for you in introducing you to who in community development or who within the foundation might be the right person to talk with. But the branch is great for two reasons. One is, again, you're getting someone in management listening to your needs, but two, then they also can begin to help you figure out whether or not even any of their staff might be willing to volunteer. It's always an opportunity for volunteerism too.
Awesome. And before I go to Kate's questions, I do want to say that even other VITA folks' relationships to you can be used to build relationships with other banks. Like, for example, if somebody out in Seattle knows that in Cleveland, well, a certain bank partners with you all, they can say in Seattle to their local bank, like, oh, your branch in Cleveland actually does this, and here's how you can do the same thing. So even having that relationship.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, for example, like KeyBank has, really odd footprint for all of their markets. And so the Cleveland market is actually their largest, event, and they host events on the same day throughout their footprint throughout the country. And so there's a lot of information sharing, and they don't do the same event necessarily in each market, but they're always looking for partners in the markets in which they host these events. So I'm happy to help make some of those connections as well. I think the other thing too is we've been able to introduce our bank partners here to some of the surrounding counties. While we work primarily in Cuyahoga County, we were able to and I'm asked actually frequently by our bank partners, who are the point of contact within the Lorain County area, the Summit County area, the Toledo County area. And so again, there's an opportunity for that relationship to go both ways. So if there's some interest or a need for a specific financial institution, I'm happy to help see what I can do.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. And Kate, I have a couple questions for you as well. You said that Anython was not the best program you could have used. Are you going to use Anython again, or have you learned about other platforms that might be a good alternative?
We didn't have any problems with Anython. My only complaint was that their processing fees were pretty high as compared to our regular credit card processing. So we are planning to use them again this year. For us, we saw this fundraising effort as sort of found money, and there were very few expenses associated with it, as opposed to having a banquet or something. So we didn't mind paying the 8% if it meant that we were going to be able to use it as a vehicle.
Gotcha. Okay. And did you see any new volunteers participate? It seems like your most successful volunteers were the returning ones.
We didn't have a great way of tracking whether new volunteers were driven by this at all, or if it spurred them to come out during February. Every year we have a pretty large population of people who are new, and some of them stick around and some of them don't. As I had also mentioned, we started pretty late, so we didn't have a chance to use this as a recruitment method.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome. Well, those are all the questions that came in. Thank you both so much for joining us today and giving your presentations. I think there was a lot of great information in there, so thank you for that. I do want to remind folks before we end that we will be sending out the recording and slides via email, so just look out in your inbox for links to that within 1 week. So before we close out, I have just a quick announcement. We do have a training with Communally coming up soon, Tax Solutions for Long-Term Financial Stability. That will be next Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So as we all know, the start of the new year is an opportune time for organizations offering free tax preparation for low and moderate income families and individuals. Tax time is a unique opportunity for workers to adjust their overall financial stability and assess their goals for the coming year. So this training will explore how Communally's online services, the Benefit Bank, and My Budget Coach can profoundly enhance financial stability for families and individuals at and beyond tax time. So you do not want to miss that. As always, please send out any questions if you need assistance. We are happy to hear from you, so please let us know if you need any support, whether it's on fundraising or any other topic related to VITA. All right, have a great rest of your day.